If you're my age or a little bit older, you might recall some form of dedicated computer class, an IT class where you were encouraged to mess around with the computer. You were taught how to use a computer, what a folder hierarchy was, how to use Word, how to use Excel, how to be safe on this newly developing internet. This was a direct, logical continuation of the older typing classes. Maybe you're even lucky and had some form of computer repair class. Now, sadly, I didn't have anything of that sort. I did have a basic robotics class, though, where we were messing around with Lego Mindstorms, which I honestly thought was super cool. Granted, most of the people there were kind of there for an easy class. If you're a bit older than me and were growing up in the 80s and 90s, you might recall magazines coming with some form of game. Not a game disc, but the actual source code for a game that you would have to go and copy by hand onto your machine. And you were probably going to make a mistake, but the source code was there, and because you're writing out the source code, maybe you messed around with some numbers, some strings, maybe you messed around with how some of the stuff worked, and sort of got a basic entry-level look at how programming kind of worked. Many of you may recall being the tech of the house, even though you probably didn't want to. Hey, fix this for me. Fix that for me. Fix my printer. How do I send an email? Why can't I attach this image? You know how computers work. You should know exactly how to do this. Even though you didn't want to do it, you probably did have the answer on how to do most of these things. I'm part of that sort of crossover period where a lot of this stuff was really starting to fade out, and I remember hearing the term very often. You probably heard it yourself. Digital native, the digital generation. This new generation of kids has grown up with computers. That means that there'll be computer geniuses, there'll be a master computer user, a computer wizard. You'll have a deep understanding of how a computer works. And if that was true, and things kept going the way that people thought they were going, that should be even more true now. If you're someone in high school, let's say you're 16, okay? Let's say you're 16, so you were born in about 2010. You've had access to a computing device pretty much your entire life. Your entire schooling period, you've probably been using some form of device, whether it be a Chromebook or an iPad or whatever else it might be. So if what everyone said came true, these kids should be digital natives. And they are. But people have started to realize that digital native does not mean you know how computers work. So this post has been getting shared around recently. Students now have the desktop skills of older boomers. Dear admin, these kids are not computer geniuses. They don't know the difference between an application and a file. They can't figure out anything on a desk computer on their own. Bring back desktop computer skill classes. It is completely true that if you put a kid in front of an iPad, an Android phone, a Chromebook, even a Windows laptop, they will very quickly work out how to use the device, how to use social media. If you put them in front of a new application, they'll probably understand how to use it pretty quickly, and then very shortly after that, probably have a better understanding of how to use it than even you do, even as an experienced user. But the mistake that society has made, basically as a whole, is assuming that this, deep understanding of how to interact with computing devices is the same thing as understanding those devices. It seems like everyone has this good understanding of how to interact with devices, but if you ask them anything about how it works or anything below that surface level of what they need to interact with, they have absolutely no idea what to even say. This has given the rise to terms like iPad baby and iPad kids, which is much like the script kiddies of the past. They are able to execute complex computing actions, but have a very surface level knowledge of how the action actually happens. Over the past 20 years, I think two major mistakes were made here. Firstly, pretty much the complete removal of any sort of computing class. Now, sometimes schools do have a programming class for people who are interested in doing programming, but it's usually an elective. It's something most of the kids are not going to do. It's something where if you feel like that is something you want to do, then that is something you're going to pursue. When you're presented with a computing device, rather than being taught how to actually use it, you're pretty much just expected to learn everything about how to do so through playing with the device. And a lot of the time, when you are entering school now, it's kind of expected that, oh, you've probably already used an iPad, you probably used some sort of device before. Well, you probably already know how to use this. There's nothing for us to teach you about how to do so. Just keep doing the thing that you are already doing. The second, and I think much more important change, is as we pulled back on these computing classes and expected kids to just, I guess, through osmosis, learn how a computer works, we've also been making these devices easier and easier and easier, removing any sort of friction that might stop you from making use of it. To the point where, in a lot of cases, a lot of the things that you want to do on a modern system are no more complex than operating a microwave. Yeah, it might not be laid out in the cleanest way. Yeah, trying to access the complex functionality might be difficult, but that basic core task, the thing you are here to do, extremely streamlined. Computers, and especially with web interfaces and games, have basically been turned into appliances that hyper-optimize for engagement and lack of user friction, because if there's any friction, there is so much competition out there that, well, this is not working for me perfectly at this very moment. I'm going to use the other thing, which might work slightly better. And if any sort of friction has been eliminated, it should be no wonder that someone who is just learning how to use a computer by just playing around with the computer isn't gonna understand how anything with the computer is actually working, right? I'm not saying that we should go back to a point where drivers just randomly crash, and if the driver crashes, it takes down your entire computer, which is still a thing on Linux, to be fair. But by having nothing ever go wrong, any problem, when there is a problem, oh, something went wrong. Not going to tell you what the error message was or an error code so you can go and try to work out what the problem was and try to fix it. It's a problem. Don't think about the problem. Don't worry about the problem. That's a problem for us to deal with. You just go about your day. If you want to, restart the computer and the problem will probably go away. But like, just don't think about the problem. It's not for you to worry about. And there is a third. I just think it's yet to fully manifest its true effects. That is the easy access to AI tooling. And we are already seeing the effect of that in general literacy rates. Kids don't know how to read. They don't know how to write, because if you don't want to read, you can just TTS anything you want. And that's great for people who are not able to see, okay? Don't get me wrong there. But for everybody else, this is causing a problem. This is causing a serious problem. And then as we start moving into these sort of agentic tools where you can send an AI out to go and do a thing for you, not just write an essay for you, but go and complete a complex task. What effect that is going to have on people's ability to actually use a computer? We're at the very basic levels of this tooling being available. When that is widely available, do you even need to know how to open an application? Do you even need to know like what a folder is, where a file on your system is, when you can tell the AI system to just go out and do it for you? Even worse, you don't even have to type it, you can just say what you want it to do. And don't get me wrong, I think the tech is super cool, and for someone who wants to go and use it as a tool to speed up what they're doing, and they already have expertise in this space, hey, that's awesome. My concern is giving people access to this when they don't have any of that sort of baseline knowledge. And a lot of that knowledge, I think, is just kind of going to vanish. Like, you know, a lot of programming knowledge has, where most people nowadays are not writing directly for the hardware. They are using a framework that is then dependent on some libraries, which then relies on your GPU drivers, which are also tied into your operating system. And there's all of these levels of abstraction, which have made things considerably easier. And a lot of the applications we have today wouldn't be possible without this abstraction, without doing a ton of extra work. but it is creating problems all the way along the chain. We are losing some complex programming knowledge, and we are losing some basic computer literacy. And it's not just me saying this, also, it's not exactly a new phenomenon. This is a post from 2017, the 4 levels of computer skills and the surprising number of adults who fail. The OECD, a club of mostly rich nations, published a survey on adult skills which captures information on proficiency in literacy, numeracy, and computer skills. Almost a quarter, 24.3% of the people in the study don't know how to use one, that being a computer. 10% had never used a computer, so took a paper-based test. Almost another 10%, 9.6%, refused to take the computer test at all, preferring to take the paper-based assignment. That's despite saying they had used a computer before. Almost 5%, 4.7% of adults, failed the basic test, which included using a mouse or scrolling through a web page. The remaining 3 quarters were sorted into 3 levels of proficiency: below level 1, level 2, and level 3. Only 5% of the population reached level 3, those most proficient in computer-related activities. 1 in 7, 14.2%, were below level 1, or at the very basic level of proficiency. That means that they could only complete very simple tasks, such as sorting emails into pre-existing folders. Almost 1/3, 28.7%, were at level 1, which meant they could use email and a browser to solve a problem, but require little or no computer navigation skills to do so. A quarter, 25.7%, were at level 2. Here, respondents had to solve a problem using an online form and some navigation across pages and applications. One example was responding to a request of information by looking through a spreadsheet and emailing an answer. Only 5.4% reached level 3, where the problem solving took place over multiple steps and operations, and none of this is complicated. None of this is difficult. It's not asking like, hey, how do you do this sorting algorithm? What is a bubble sort? Anything like that. No. This is, can you use a computer to complete basic computer-related tasks? Now, keep in mind, this is 2017, so this is pre-lockdowns. I would assume that a lot of people were basically forced to learn at least the very basics of what they needed for their job, if nothing else, in the coming years. From the EU in 2024, lagging digital literacy among 14-year-olds across the EU study finds 43% of students do not reach the basic level of digital skills, according to the International Computer and Information Literacy Study. If you'd like to check out the study for yourself, I will leave this page linked down below. Basically, they don't know how to use a computer. And then from Australia, we have this right here. Latest data reveals digital skills amongst young Australians from 2023. The test, part of the National Assessment Program, NAP sample assessments, was taken in 2022 and test students' general ICT skills and knowledge in a sample of schools across the country. The sample tests are held every 3 years, but were cancelled in 2020 and 2021 due to the pandemic. In the 2022 report, 55% of Year 6 students, that is about 11 or so, attained the proficient standard compared to 53% in 2017. This result is not significantly different from the previous NAP ICT literacy cycles, except for 2011 at 62%. The average scale score of students in Year 6, 414, was significantly lower than in 2011, 435, but not significantly different from the average in any other cycle, including 2017. 46% of Year 10 students attained the proficient standard compared to 54% in 2017. This is significantly lower than the percentage achieved in all previous cycles of NAP ICT literacy. The average scale score of students in Year 10, that is 16 or so, was significantly lower than in 2017, 2011, 2008, and 2005, but not significantly lower than the average score reported in 2014. So basically, things haven't fallen off of a cliff. It's just, they've stopped going up and are basically trending downwards. We can keep going down the list and talking about numbers, but let's go back to that Reddit thread. Technology classes should be teaching this and keyboard skills in elementary school. Our school district is severely lacking in this, and I have made my displeasure known. Parents will have to pick up the slack here, I am afraid. A small subset of this thread were not happy about the boomer talk because the boomers are the people that built all the computers that everybody are using. And yes, this is true, but it was a very small subset of the boomers who understood computers. Most people had no idea what a computer even was. Same experience here. I'm not a teacher. I'm a master's student. I'm a little bit older than my friends. They are 25, they're around 21 and 22. I was surprised that a lot of them don't know a lot of basic stuff like compressing a file. This is not like the average population. This is a master's student. When I talked to them, I realized they often didn't have a computer or just a laptop for work. They didn't need more because growing up, and still right now, they play video games on a console. We can just watch YouTube and all. Whereas for older people like myself, 25, I'm 27, 28 very shortly. Let's not say older. Let's not do that. Most of us had a computer because even just 4 years prior to them, console couldn't do much other than just gaming. It may only be part of the answer, but I found it really interesting. So when I was in university, I was in a master's database class, I believe it was. And this is going to sound stupid because it's a master's database class. One of the students in the class, well, multiple of them didn't have any, like, basic programming knowledge. This was in a master's class. Also, some of them couldn't explain what a database was in a master's database class. I'm not talking about going over to the psychology department and asking them about Python code. I'm in a master's database class where there should be programmers and database people. Why are you here? Schools only taught Gen Y how to use tech, then assumed everyone else acquired the skill by osmosis. I am certain that you are bare minimum over the age of 35 because anyone else would have said the term millennial. As a high school tech teacher, I can confirm, it shocked most people how many kids can't even identify the computer. You tell them to turn the computer on, and they start looking at the power button on the monitor. You've probably seen many, many clips of this happening. I know people in my life who would do the exact same thing. Instead of just integrating Chromebooks into every class, bring back computer class. It was a mandatory credit at my high school, how to type, how to use Microsoft Office, email etiquette, and stuff like that. And frankly, I don't necessarily agree with the Microsoft stuff, but bring back some form of computer class. Preferably teaching them how to use Linux and various things like this, and just, even if it's a basic, like, Windows thing, how to use Word and stuff like that, even that is better than nothing, because right now, nothing is what we're doing. Nothing is the current state of things. There's often this talk of making Linux easier to use, more streamlined, and all this good stuff, and I'll be part of this conversation as well, but I think there is something nice about if you're going to use Linux, yeah, maybe you're not a programmer, maybe you don't have a deep understanding of your system, but there is some level of friction there. If you're going to use Linux, you have to use the terminal from time to time. If you're going to use Linux, you have to think about distros and have to think about desktops. It's not just all handed to you, and you don't have to think about anything. I understand wanting to make things simpler and simpler, but I think something about this honestly is a good thing, but I don't know, maybe you disagree. Let me know your thoughts down below. Like the video, subscribe as well, and if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon subscribers daily bearer pay linked in the description down below. That's gonna be it for me, and the kids can't read, the kids can't do math, the kids can't use computers. Welcome to the future.
Like this.